Hello, everyone. It's me, Andrew. I'm here in my home in lovely Ligonier, Pennsylvania, and hopefully you all are doing well out there. Uh, it's been a day, y'all. Um, and yeah, I won't dwell too much on it because I've done a lot of that already today. However, what I will say is that for me, one of the things that has always helped me whenever I've run into any time of adversity or frustration is to make something. So I thought today I would take an opportunity to just hang out and make some things, and I think that'll be nice. Um, if you're watching, please say hello and maybe where you're tuning in from. It's always nice to see who's watching. I see Sandra's watching. Hi, Sandra. So we've been busy in this shop. Um, I need to double check on certain things. I know that Jen was unable to um, film last night. Usually we have filming on Tuesday nights at the cottage. But unfortunately, she wasn't able to film last night. So I don't know if we're going to have a Saturday tutorial or not. We're going to try if we can do it, but I don't know if we are going to be able to or not. Um, and let's see what else. Because of the things going on, some of the personal things going on, there may be some closures next week. So we're talking with some of our helpers and trying to figure things out about that and the logistics. So we're going to try to keep up to date. Um, Unfortunately, that means probably next week, that means we'll not be on live very much. So just know that. We'll try to keep things kind of fun and post new things while we're away. Um, but yeah, so we're going to do our best to try to keep things going while we're trying to navigate some family issues. But yeah. All right. I see Cheryl's watching. Hi, Cheryl. Lorraine is watching. Hi, Lorraine. Susan's watching. Hey, Susan. I first wanted to say thank you to everybody who has shown their support and love throughout all of the things that we've been going through. I know that it's a lot. It's a lot, y'all. It's a lot for me too. Seems like we every 2 weeks there's something new. I'm like, can I get off this ride? Maybe go on to the lazy river ride instead of this roller coaster business. Um, so anyways, we're doing our best to stay focused, stay grounded, stay creative. I always feel like it's important to me to make things when I am not doing well. I actually had a really wonderful conversation with a friend from high school, and she messaged me a couple weeks ago, and she took a picture of her yearbook, which I had signed. Um, and we talked about how even back then, I was using my creativity to get through some of the adversity that I had been facing in my life, and that I've always used my creativity as a way to help heal and to move forward and tackle kind of obstacles and challenges in my life. So I thought today, what better thing to do than to hang out and make some stuff. So if you've got your things, your supplies, hopefully you'll gather some of those up, and we'll hang out and make some stuff. And yeah, I see Shakita's watching. Hey there. So yeah, it's been a challenging time. We're still moving forward as best as possible. I think with like my dad has always been a big proponent of working and working hard. Um, and I think that if anything, the legacy that I've been kind of instilled with, or the lessons that I've been taught from him, are that hard work is important. And I know that sometimes it's actually gotten a little bit to a toxic point where at one point I kind of equated my self-worth to my productivity, and that's not necessarily a good thing. However, I realize that there's a balancing act with that. So, I'm going to keep working because it's important to me to keep things going. It would be easy to kind of like just kind of mentally shut down and just like not do anything. But I think that would make it worse. I think when you're able to have a creative outlet, um, that is a good thing. So, um, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, my dad is in the hospital and he's dying. Um, so that's that. And so we're going to be going down to Florida to be with my mom and as things progress. Um, Anyways, so I'm gonna flip the camera around because really, uh, it'll be better to look at some nice things instead of looking at me on camera doing. I don't know what I'm doing. All right, so I'm gonna flip this around. You're gonna see the ceiling for a second. All right. Let's see if I remember how to do this. It's been a minute since I've been on. I know William's been on more. Oh, speak of the William. We might need to turn off the heater because I turned the heater on, but I'm roasting.
It's nice in here, I think. You're roasted in here. You want me to just turn it down a little?
I turned it.
Oh, you did turn it down a little.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm getting kind of sweaty, and then it's that weird stress sweat. So then it's like, I don't know if you get that or not. I hope others don't experience this. However, I get this stress sweat and it smells kind of funky. And so I've been like taking multiple showers throughout the day. And like, I don't know, I've been using the same deodorant, and usually it works. But
I don't smell it. You're good.
I mean, because I just took a shower.
No, I mean in general.
Oh. Wow. I don't trust your sense of smell though. So I was like, whoo-wee. Even the cats. I was holding Tallulah and she put her nose under my arm and she looked like she got into something foul. I didn't know a cat could make their face like that, but apparently she looked horrified. And I was like, me too, Tallulah, me too. All right, let me turn this on.
So what you working on today?
I think I'm gonna make some earrings.
Nice.
I don't know if that actually is better or not. I would put this down, but all these beads might roll all over the countryside. Let me try to dump this quickly.
I was gonna say you need help, but you don't want me helping with that. I'd make it worse.
Maybe. I'm not gonna
Put it
deny.
in that bowl.
All right, y'all can see the mess. All right, so here's this. I don't want to get stabbed with a needle. That's the thing.
No, don't do that.
That's it. And then also, you don't get stabbed with a needle because you're the blood sign.
Found the needle. I'm gonna put the needle in here.
Is it connected?
Connected to
the thread?
Yeah, the thread's in it, but that's.
I stab it in that thing.
Oh, okay. You have a spot for it.
So this is kind of a mess, y'all. But it's not too bad. I've been trying to clean up as I go, but
how's everyone doing out there?
I don't know. How y'all doing? What y'all up to? I've been talking about my trauma time. How about your trauma time?
Are you just on YouTube or are you on both?
I'm on both, I think.
Because I just I didn't check. I just saw YouTube.
Yeah, the YouTube's good about notifications. Sometimes I feel like, do we have a triangle? Elusive triangle?
We have 80 of them in the house somewhere.
I know. There should be one on the floor.
There was when we were dealing with this, but it may have moved since.
Migrated. Anyways, so people are like, what are we doing today? Making some stuff, trying. Well, let's think of alternative. Do you have a stiff piece of paper? All right, thank you. I'll make my own triangle, y'all. All right, I put this down so that the beads don't roll everywhere. We had a whole week of stuff planned out, but with everything going on, it's not been ideal for that. So we're just gonna roll with it. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't, then watch somebody else. William's like, don't tell people not to watch.
He's really good about telling people not to watch.
Correct. I was like, I don't care. Whatever. Somebody sassed me last night. And I was like, I don't care what you think. Yeah, anyway, so Susan says one positive thing, our Smokey had a good checkup Monday. That's good. All right, so if you didn't know, I created a series called Noble Creatures, and these the first batch I made to help offset some of the medical expenses for William's surgery, his AFib. I know his eyes got big for a second. But so we're catching up with that, and hopefully he has an appointment in 2 weeks, and hopefully that comes back good and he doesn't have to stay on that medication because it's expensive. But anyway, so these ones are made to help offset the cost of going to Aramont. I was super fortunate and was able to get invited to a retreat at Aramont called Pentaculum. It's really exclusive, and because it's invitation only, so I don't even know who nominated me, but I'm thankful to whoever nominated me. Did you turn the heater off?
I did.
Oh boy.
You're gonna be cracking the windows here.
I know. Usually this room is so chilly.
Yeah. It's nice.
And do what?
I was cold today.
Was it chilly in the shop? Yeah, the building, I don't know. You would think we would be like the warmest room right
in the middle, the center.
Insulated, but I don't know.
That back hallway, because they don't heat the back room that's for rent.
Oh.
And so the back room is cold and it blows through the hallway down right under our door.
Yeah, put plastic like at the cottage. They're gonna be like, what kind of 11 hands of home business is this?
This is what you make me do.
Anyway, so I made these to help offset some of the expenses of going to Aramont. We already paid the registration. I was actually going to cancel, and then William was like, you have to go. And then I was like, why? And then he said that it's good if I go, because who knows if I'll have this opportunity again.
Goodbye, everybody.
He's leaving. He has to go to his pottery class. And so anyways, he's messing around with the cats. So I'm doing this because we've been having some issues with getting the foot traffic in the store, and y'all know this. This is not anything new. It's just been something that's been cumulative. I think it's one of those things as small business, like, if you have a bad day, that's fine. If you have two bad days, it gets worse. So for the shop, it's one of those things where we have lots of good days, but we also have more bad days. So we've just been behind a lot, which doesn't leave a lot of extra for anything else. So I made these as a way to offset some of those expenses, and some of them have sold already. So thank you to everybody who got some. I really appreciate it. It will help me pursue my goals and hopefully make some connections and have some good times making some stuff and learning and doing, just enjoying that experience. So thank you to everybody who got one. Basically anybody who's been purchasing anything in the shop lately. We uh so with my dad and stuff, we had kind of the last time that we knew anything, his condition was stable and he was going to go in for treatment. Um, and he's probably, if he's watching, he's probably real disgusted now that I'm telling everybody and everything. But, um, you know, it's hard to exclude certain bits of information. However, anyway, um, so we thought everything would be fine, you know, not fine, fine, but that we would get through things. And then with all this happening, it's been kind of an upheaval. And anyway, so I posted these on the website. They are in the online store now. That's at allegorygallery.com. You can find this and all of the other ones that haven't sold. I do have a plan to make a total of 60 of these for the whole series. So I'm about halfway through now. Um, but you know, it it'll happen when it happens. I actually made these so that I can take them when I travel. So I may bring these to Florida with us, and I can work on them hopefully while I'm there. But I don't know. It depends on how much time we have, because it is a relatively short trip. So it's not like I'm going down to Florida to make stuff. I'm going down to try to help and be supportive, but I also like to keep busy. I don't like to just sit around idle. So, anyway, so these are available online. And to everybody else who has supported us recently and kept us going and sent words of encouragement and positivity, we appreciate all of you out there. We could not do this without all of you. And it really is a special thing that we're able to do what we do, because not everybody can. So we appreciate that and are very thankful for this little life that we have. All right. So, ants, the noble creatures, are so charming and magical. Thank you. Yeah, somebody else had asked about where these kind of came from. And there's a couple different inspirations or reasons why these kind of develop. And one of the things is that when I was little, I was kind of lonely. My siblings are older than me, and they were pretty much out of the house or on their way out of the house, and they didn't necessarily want their little brother tagging along. So I spent a lot of time alone as a child, which is probably explains a lot. But we had this great big camphor tree behind the house. We grew up in this old orange grove house, this wooden orange grove house that was built in the 1920s. And people used to say that it was a haunted house and stuff because all around us were all these new subdivisions. At the time, it was all new. Now they're not new. Um, but anyway, so there are all these new subdivisions and stuff around us, and we were in this old house. And behind the house was a camphor tree, and it was a great big camphor tree, and it was small, so I could climb up into the tree, and it was kind of like a tree house. And so I used to go back there, and I would keep my little treasures in a knot in the hole in a tree. um, and I would have imaginary little parties with these animals, and I would always have a cat with me, of course, because we had lots and lots of cats. Um, and so I would kind of have these little festive gatherings with my imaginary animal friends. And it was a way of me to process things and deal with things and kind of escape a lot of stuff that was happening in my life. I used to read a lot as a child. The library was one of my safe places, and I read a lot of fantasy and like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and C.S. Lewis, and there was always talking animals, and I always used to think of how wonderful it was to have there having animals be able to talk. And so, anyway, so that's kind of where that idea kind of kind of came out of. And it's funny because as I get older, one of the things that I've noticed is that with my artwork, I keep circling back to certain ideas and motifs. And even though I am much more worldly than I used to be, and have a lot more experiences under my belt, I still circle back to these ideas. And it's funny how certain things that happen in your early childhood development kind of stick with you. And I talk about things, especially with this kind of artwork, that kind of references whimsy in childhood. And I think that there's something nice about that. This world that we live in is oftentimes really cruel and has a lot of heartache. And, there's a lot of tragedy that's in this world, but there's also a lot of good. And I think it's good. It's a nice thing to remember and to acknowledge the good. um, and I do make pieces of work that also talk about some of those more challenging topics. But I also think that I try to balance that out with some of these fun things as well. It's good for me and my mental headspace to make things that kind of fill me with joy, and hopefully they make other people feel joy as well. One thing that um, that I that oh, so one thing that I also saw is when we were at Handmade Arcade and had the products made from these images, people would like squeal with delight, and that was just such a wonderful thing. It was nice to see kids light up and adults light up, and so I think it's nice that we can balance that out. Hello, Cindy. She said, "Did you read The House Without Windows?" Um, is that the T.J. Klune book? I don't know. Um, it's not ringing a bell right off the top of my head, but I read a lot of books a lot of times.
Keys in here?
I don't know.
I don't see them.
You can use mine if you can't find them. They're in my bag. But check the locks too in case you left it in the locks. William lost his keys. I always put my keys in the same place, so I always know where everything is. Anyways, so these are available. They're on the online store. And thank you so much for everybody who got them. So yeah, I think today I'm gonna make some earrings. We had this idea of making something called Earring Palooza. Um, I don't know. Cindy says, I forget the writer. It's a childhood book where she lives in nature and disappears in real life. I don't know. I don't remember. I read a lot and um I don't know. That one doesn't ring any bells right off the top of my head. Um I'm gonna raise this up a smidgen so that I don't accidentally hit the camera with stuff. If you didn't know, I love pearls, which is probably another childhood thing. My mom is from the Philippines, and when she was young, her mom gave her this pearl that she found, and it was, it wasn't a perfect pearl. They were extremely poor. And when I talk about extremely poor, it's like a level of poverty that people in the US probably couldn't imagine. But or if they can imagine it, it's not something that they see regularly unless you go into some of the more um off the fringe kind of places. But yeah, so my mom, she got from her mom, which I found out recently that my grandma on my mom's side, which I never knew because she passed away before I was born, used to travel around the Philippines and would sell and make jewelry, which I thought was really kind of wild that I had spent all these years making jewelry, traveling around, selling jewelry. And I never knew that that was kind of a family history. So, yeah. Isn't that weird how things you don't even know about are sometimes connected um, to your present, the past? And the present are connected in that weird kind of chain in a loop that never ends. So yeah, so anyway, she had this pearl that was in this old red wicker basket that she used to keep next to her bedside table area. And she showed it to me, and she used to tell me stories about the Philippines and would show me this pearl, which was not, it was kind of, I don't know, but it was really misshapen. And so I always was fascinated by it. And she would tell us stories about how there were these clams that were the size of a bathtub. And if you weren't careful, they would bite your foot off. And about giant birds that would swoop down and pick you up if you were bad. Um, and as westernized, even though that word isn't really a thing anymore, but as kind of like Americanized kids, we were like, nah, nah. And then as adults, you realize that there are sometimes a little bit of truth to that. So there's a thing called a monkey eating eagle. And there are reports of children, small children, being mistaken for monkeys and being carried away. So that's true. And then there were these clams. They don't necessarily bite your foot off like in a way that um it's not like they're chomping around at the bottom of the ocean, but they are super large, and when they close they have a huge I can't remember what the word is, but they when they close it's a pretty hard to open them back up. It's not torque, but it's kind of like that, one of those words that's kind of like that. And Like, I don't know if it would, like, cut your foot off, but if you were, swimming around and your foot got caught and you couldn't get out, then you would either drown or have to cut off your own foot. So, anyways, those are real. And so there's things like that that kind of seep into my work as well. So I think it's interesting how these different stories that we're told have influences in the things that we make. And I guess that's like any artist or any person, they all have things that interest them and fascinate them and kind of stick in their minds. So I thought it'd be nice to make some stuff with pearls today. We have a bunch of pearls in the online store. I don't really have any particular projects planned because today was kind of a rough one. So I've just kind of decided that we would just hang out and make stuff. I don't know how y'all feel about that, but that's what we're gonna do. Um, so yeah. Cindy says, I still like stuff from all my fairy tale books. Me too. I mean, when I'm working, I generally look at this thing that I made. This was out of pearls. It's like a beaded bead kind of thing. I just digging through and I found that. That's fun. Here's here's a fun one. So I really do genuinely. Here's another one of those little things. I think I had a project in mind for that, and then I worked on a piece called the Pearl Diver, and so maybe I made that for that necklace. It was a part of my self portrait series. Here's some coin pearls. I love the coin pearls. They're drilled in the center, so they're great big discs. I see Michelle's watching. Hi, Michelle. And I see Marianne's watching. Hi, Marianne. Um, so yeah, it's been one of those things where I've been kind of thinking a lot about life and childhood um, and kind of figuring out um, some stuff, which is kind of vague, I know. But I think that's one of those things that is a natural thing that happens when you face, you know, life and death kind of situations. And um, you start thinking about your life. And I think that's a good thing. That's a natural thing to kind of think about that. Some of these pearls, I keep some of the broken ones because I use those in my collage work or my assemblage work. See, yeah. Yeah, so I think we're going to make some earrings. We were going to do a program called Earring Palooza, but we really didn't have a chance to get that kind of fleshed out and off the ground before. But I think it's a fun way to kind of make stuff. And for me, the holidays are always such a busy time. When I was at the store, and here's another little tidbit about some of our plans. I'm thinking about going back to the store maybe 1 or 2 days a week, just to kind of reconnect with things and see customers that I haven't seen in a long time. Because I haven't really worked in the store I mean, we just celebrated 12 years in business, and um, I worked every day at the store for the first 4 years, and then William took over, and then it wasn't until, like, maybe the pandemic, and then I worked for, like, a year at the store, 1 or 2 days a week, and then I got out of doing that when we decided to open another business. So, so yeah, I haven't really worked in the shop at all lately. So it'll be nice to get back into that. Marion said once you get past the numb stage, you do reevaluate a lot of things. Coletti's watching. Hi there. So yeah, I kind of feel like, oh, anyway, so when I used to work in the shop, I would make earrings in between my chores. So I kind of feel like at the shop, there's like never ending chores. Even just being just like hanging out, you're rearranging and remerchandising and cleaning the windows and vacuuming and sweeping and wiping stuff down and doing all that stuff. Um, and so in between that, I used to have a tray and I would just make earrings um, in my downtime. And I kind of miss that. It was nice to have kind of that thing where I would just make stuff and hang out. So I got a couple. I'm gonna dig out all my tools since they're buried. I made a kit to take with us to Handmade Arcade, and now I'm kind of going through and unearthing everything. And then something sticky got in there, y'all. Ooh, I love this. We don't sell these, but this is called a double flush cutter. And Xuron makes them, and they're wonderful. You don't end up with that weird kind of sharp bevel at the end of your whatever wire you're cutting. Michelle says, I miss seeing you make projects. I know, it's been a while. Um, I haven't, I can't remember what happened at some point, but we transitioned away from that so that we could make money for the shop to keep going. And I love the democratization of information and the availability of stuff for folks to have, and I'm happy to teach free workshops all the time, but we don't necessarily make any money off of that when I do that. So um it's nice when we have like a show and tell and can kind of share the things that we're bringing into the store. But who knows? Maybe I'll get back into it. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. All right. So I've got these silverhead pins. I think those ones are the anti-tarnish ones, which are super helpful. I love a good patina, but sometimes you just don't want that. So yeah, so let's see. I kind of like these. These are little coin pearls that are center drilled. Um, and I think that would make like a nice little hat. So yeah, I love pearls. And we did a mix for one of the challenges that was all pearls. And I hope that if you didn't get that kit, um, I hope you did get it because it was a good mix. It was probably one of my favorites that we've made. Marion says, you are here today. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good to stay creative, and I know that for me, whenever I make stuff, I always feel better. It's a good thing for me to stay creative and stay positive. I think it's a nice thing to do. I'm a big proponent of feeling your feelings, but I also feel like sometimes that can be a slippery slope because sometimes if you don't, if you're not cognitive, if you're not cognizant, is that a word? Cognizant? If you're not aware of um, how those feelings can be channeled, they can be sometimes not always great in the sense that, it's okay to be sad, but sometimes if you allow that sadness to take over, you can downward spiral. And in that downward spiral, then you can do other things that are not awesome and can be harmful not only to yourself but others. So for me, I feel like it's always good to, feel your feelings, acknowledge them, understand them. I feel like your feelings are teachers. They help us understand the world around us, and process the things that are around us. I don't think we would have feelings if they weren't a useful kind of survival skill. They help us determine what's good and what's not good. And, it's one of those things where I think it's something that it's a part of the human experience. And so if we ignore those feelings and if we ignore that part of ourselves and we try to shut that off and bury them, then we're shutting off this fundamental part of us that, um, is a part of who we are as a human being. And I think whenever we do that, we open ourselves up to potential problems. So I think it's good to always be mindful of of these parts and to treat them in a holistic and healthy way. If you're angry, why are you angry? If you're sad, why are you sad? If you're happy, why are you happy? And for me, I do a lot of work as a creative individual and a creative professional to stay creative and stay making things. So I always kind of look at my creativity and try to understand it better so that if I don't have a point where I can't function as a creative entrepreneur. There's a lot of people that got burnt out and they can't make anything, and it's natural to have creative blocks. So for me, it's all about understanding the process so I don't have those creative blocks and can continue to make things, and to have a livelihood. So that's like with all things and all emotions. If you understand what brings you happiness, then you can have more happiness, opportunities for yourself that will inspire you to keep going, and have more happiness in your life. The same thing with things that trigger anger and aggression or frustration. There are things that you can say, oh, this is not good. So let's not do those things anymore. Marion says, all feelings are valid. Um, Janice says, agree 100%, Andrew, when it comes to feelings. So I think it's important that we acknowledge those things and then develop. And if you can't, there's sometimes things that happen to you that you can't really control. There's a lot of stuff actually that you can't control in life. And this illusion, this illusion, this idea of control is an illusion. Because there's so many things that could happen that are outside of our ability to, control. And so part of that, of understanding that, is realizing, that you can only do so much. And so for me, whenever I've had any hardships in my life, I've always turned to my creativity. And I think that's one of the important things for the bead store. Um, I realize and recognize how important beading can be. It's one of those things that um, is super important to me because I see the value in it. It's helped me, and I hope it can help others as well. We work to fundraise for a really wonderful nonprofit called Beads of Courage, and they give beads to kids facing serious illnesses. Um, a bead for every treatment they get. So a lot of these kids are nonverbal, so or so young that they don't know how to quantify or communicate the stories of their survival, basically. Um, and so these beads, are an emblem, and uh, sh- they showcase the journeys that the kids have been through. So I think there's a power in being able to tell your story. There's a power in being able to own your story. There's a power in words, and there's a power in being able to express yourself. And so it was important for us as a store to create a safe space for people to be able to do that and to pass that on to other people as they are navigating their own things in life. And that's kind of the thing that relates to the name of this store. We call it Allegory Gallery, and it relates to the fact that everything has a story, everything has a hidden meaning. There are things that are happening that not everybody knows. And so we want to empower people to be able to tell their stories. And beading is just one of the ways that we can do that. Sorry that I'm so snorchy. All right, so let me line up some things. I've got some really wonderful kind of irregular pearls. These holes may be too small for this head pin, and they are. So I'm going to save those for another project. But I like these. I'm drawn to these, so I'm going to use these. And I kind of like the idea of having like a little bit of color. So there are these really lovely kind of peacock colored pearls. If the hole is a little bit small, but it goes mostly through, sometimes what I do is I will take my pliers and I will hold it stationary, and I'll hold it close to the pearl like so, and then I'll gently twist and then move that along. And the reason why I'm doing that is if I hold back here, then this wire can bend, and it won't have enough kind of um, uh, force to go through. And then once it goes through, then you just pull it on like so. Donna says, "Oh, those pearls are fabulous. Thank you. This is from my private stash, but there's more available online in our website." I don't know. I feel like there's something missing here. There's a little bit of something missing. Um, so let me think. How am I going to do this? That's the other thing is sometimes you know, and then sometimes you don't know. I think I have an idea. All right. So I had some beading thread earlier and a needle. All right. So this is some fire line, 6-pound fire line, and a size 10 needle. And I'm going to pick up some of these seed pearls. And I'm going to string up a couple of these, I think. And yeah. So when these seed pearls come to it, I like to, because they're kind of pear shaped, sometimes I like to put the round ends to the round ends. Or I'll take, these are some, these aren't actually pearls. These are a pearlescent seed bead in a size 6 or so. And I'll space them out so that they aren't all kind of, it kind of looks funky if you string them up and then they're all kind of wonkadoodle. So I kind of like to um I like to space them out. I have a little baggie of those size 6 seed beads. Sweet Pea said, "What's Fireline for?" It's for bead weaving. So it started off in the fishing industry, believe it or not. And it's something that you can use to weave things. So I'm not going to get too wild, but I strung up a seed pearl, a seed pearl, seed bead, seed pearl, seed bead, seed pearl, seed bead. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this all the way down close to the end. And then I'm going to string this back up through there. I'm going to hold this down because I don't want to necessarily make a knot or tie anything just yet. And I don't necessarily want to put a stop bead on. And we're going to see if I can push this through. Because sometimes when you have that, the fire line will, the pearls are not drilled with great big holes. So sometimes you have to kind of force it through. And sometimes I'll get a plier to help me pull the needle through. Sweet Pea says, "Why would you use this instead of another wire?" So you'll see what I'm doing right now as I progress. But this is, I'm making a non-structural element for my 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 jewelry design. So this is not something that's going to get a lot of weight attached to them. If it was something that was going to get a lot of weight, um I would change it up. Let's see if I can get this. I'm going to try to do this where I don't stab myself. So I'm using my pliers to help guide it through. Danette's watching. Hi, Danette. And so this is, in theory, I don't know how many of these I'm going to be able to do because it's not actually very quick, but, and I guess it depends on the size of the holes in the pearls as well. Um, so yeah, so this is one of those things where if you knew in advance that you were doing this, which I did not know until I kind of sat down and realize this, is there's a thing called a pearl reamer, and it's got kind of a texture to it, and you can go in and use that to texture or remove some of the pearl inside of the pearl. And so I've got this, and I've strung up kind of, you can see there's a seed bead, a seed pearl, a seed bead, a seed pearl. And I've gotten to the end here, and then I'm going to tie this. So I'm going to tie it once here, like so. And then I'm going to take this tail, and then I'm going to do a surgeon's knot and go multiple times through that loop. And then I like to do it another time for good measure. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim it. All right. Normally, if this was a structural element, I would want to go through several times just to make sure that so I would go through several times so it's nice and sturdy, and it's not. I cut too close to the knot, y'all. So that's my fault. But that's another opportunity for like a thread zapper. And let me do that again since that slipped off. But anyways, I have this idea that I'm going to make a little decorative ring of pearls that I can use in my design. So I'm going to do this one more time and we'll see how this goes. So I'm going to string this. Hopefully, now that I've already kind of put the pearls on and gone through with the holes already, that kind of cleared out anything that may have made the holes kind of smaller. And I can go, let's see, seed pearl, seed bead, seed pearl, seed bead, seed pearl, seed bead. I'm going to put this down at the bottom. And then I'm also, like I was doing before, I'm going to string this up through the bottom of this and hope that I can push it through without too much hassle. Sometimes the other problem is that if the hole is too small, you can inadvertently cut your thread on the inside. So maybe that's what happened. So maybe I'll skip the seed pearls and just do the seed beads. Let's just do seed beads. They're pretty. And I know that their holes are ample enough that I can go through several times. So I'm going to string up maybe 2, 4, 6, 8. That looks nice. Maybe we'll do 2 more. 10. We're doing 10 of these little size 6 seed beads. And I'm going to take this down to the end. I'm going to tie a loop here. Not too long of a loop because then I'm going to run out of thread, which is not the end of the world, but I would like to not have to do that on having to add thread, and we just have such a small component. And then what I'm going to do is go through and go back through these 2 at a time, like so, and reinforce this. And that's also going to help with the shape. If you just go through once, it kind of is loosey-goosey style. And I want to have a nice kind of structure to it. I don't want this to be too loose because I want to have a little decorative element. Doesn't mean that I want it to be wobbly. So not too tight, but not too loose. It's always the way with seed beads, getting that tension just right. So I'm going to go through again. I just completed one pass through them, and then I'm going to go through one more time, and then I'm going to tie it off. And then hopefully this one won't fall apart. And I really do think, because I tied that knot pretty good, is that I split the thread with a needle when I was trying to force it through with the pliers. So I think that's what happened. So it's already completed as a loop, and then I'm just going to tie this off and then trim it. Danette says, I'm glad that you and William did well at the Handmade Arcade. Wish I would have gone. Yeah, it's a great show. You should definitely check it out next year. Hopefully, we get in next year. It's a juried process, and every year is different. So it's not like a legacy thing. Um, it was a lot of fun. I always like to see people. I'm one of those people who's an extroverted introvert. Um, Norma says, I didn't get any kind of alert from either YouTube or Facebook. We didn't do a banner. I know we didn't do a banner, so that might have been part of it. But I know some people got notifications. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little pearl, this little ring of pearls, and cap that like this. And then I'm going to put this on top as a little hat. And then that kind of softens the transition. See, without that, it gets like this. Take a look. All right. So this is what it looks like without that ring. It's kind of a sharp difference between this shape and this shape. And I kind of want to soften that transition. So that little ring of seed beads, I think will help soften that transition just a little bit and add a little bit more texture. What do y'all think about that? Um, so I kind of like that. If I wanted to, I could also probably put something at the tip there to kind of also embellish that little end there. And I used to get um, these vintage. They're like little bead caps. They look like little tiny little pasties out of metal. Um, And you can do that if you want. You can take metal sequins and put them in a dapping block and dome them. So I'm going to go and let me see. I think it needs something else. I think it needs something else. So I'm going to look for a pearl. Maybe that's kind of a. I'm just going to test it out and see how this goes. Now the pearls aren't always drilled the way you want them for this larger gauge wire. So you just kind of have to be mindful of that. And like I said, if you run into any issues, you can hold this, hold the wire with your pliers and then gently twist it and work your way. I also hold that hole downward, and that's so that if there's any kind of like dust or something, it will fall out and it won't clog up the holes. Marion said, double check, Norma, that you're still subscribed. Sometimes YouTube will unsubscribe you. What do y'all think about that? I don't know. I feel like then it needs a little something around this thing then too. But I think I kind of like that. So I'm going to roll with it. So I'm going to get my round nose pliers and I'm going to make my rounded loop. I know that everybody wire wraps differently. And at this point, I've been wire wrapping so long in this way that it would feel weird to do it any other way. I know some people, they were taught differently, and that's fine. I also like a little bit more of an organic um, uh, look to my wire wraps. I used to, when I first started making jewelry, I would make really tight kind of machine looking coils. But then I was like, that looks like a machine made it. So I kind of like that handmade quality to it. So I like a little bit of a messy wrap. Now, as you can see, I have not gotten all the way around to wrapping it. What I do is, here's a little trick, is take the tip of my pliers and at the very end of this wire, kind of curl that in like so. And then that way, when you're rolling your wire in, it will kind of naturally conform to the shape of your wire wrap. And then you don't have to struggle. And also, that little tip is already kind of angled in. If you've ever done a wire wrap and you haven't done that, sometimes what happens is that little sharp tip kind of sticks out, and then you'll be doing something and you'll feel it jagged in there. So yeah, it kind of looks like a little android, like one of those creatures on Star Wars. So here we go. That's the first one. I don't know. I'm also super hypercritical of myself, so there's another thing. Hopefully you're not as critical about your work as I am, but I'm like, I don't know if I like this. It kind of looks like a crown, like somebody's wearing a crown. But anyway, so here's the first one, and then I'll do it again, but in double time this time. So this thread is too short to do that, so I'm just gonna cut that off or pull that off and give myself a little bit more thread. Hopefully y'all are doing well out there. If you've been working on anything, let me know. I always like to hear what people have been up to. I think it's nice that we have this little community here where we can share the things that we've been doing in our lives and the things we've been making. I think it's helpful. So here we go. Susan says, back to the iPad. Hello to anyone who I may have missed. And I'm trying to read and keep up with the comments, but sometimes I miss them. So there's that. All right. So I'm going to string up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I'm going to pull this relatively close to the bottom there. And I'm going to make a little knot. So it is important, as you saw earlier, to keep your, when you're stringing up your pearls and different things like that, that there's enough clearance that you're not accidentally cutting your thread. Susan says, I'm hypercritical too about my work. I fret about the wrap loops. I made some earrings yesterday, need to post them in the AG Design Challenge page. Marion says, I tracked down my sanding pads so I can finish my gilding wax application on my triptych. I want to distress the gilding. Oh, good. So with my needle, I'm just going to go back through my loop. And this will help reinforce my loop and make it a little bit stronger. I'm always kind of considering this term hanging by a thread. There's this idea about like beadwork, particularly. And if you spend all this time beading, you want to make sure that, like, this is pretty quick. So this isn't a good example. But if you do something more elaborate, that if you spend all that time weaving it, that any of your points of connections are super strong, just so that it doesn't break, and then all that time you've invested in your project, it gets gone away into the nothing. because of like a clasp falling off. So I'm just going to go underneath this thread, my original thread, and make a loop, and then go through that loop, and it'll be tied off. Susan says, I really like this design, Andrew. Thanks. I just came up with it. Marion says, how's your tapestry going, Michelle? It looked like when we saw your project at book club that you got a lot done. Cindy said, bee weaving is fun and relaxing. Yeah, it can be. Sometimes it can be super frustrating, though. If you've ever been making a project and then you realize that you got a count off. But I like to do things. Somebody once said that I was so patient. And one of the things that I do is I do things that require a lot of patience to kind of train myself. So, like when it comes to like organizing beads, I'll take a big tray of like a seed bead mix and then go through that tray and organize and sort them. And somebody was like, I could never do that. I would go crazy. And the thing is that, it's a skill like anything else. Like some people have more aptitude for that kind of thing, but also it's one of those things that if you keep doing something, you just get better at it. And it requires that focus also of being able to do things and then also be able to separate out your mind in a way. And says, Susan, I've read about my wrap loops too. Sometimes I think they look fine, sometimes not. They're probably not all that different. Coletti says, I made a little axolotl polymer clay beads, stuck 3 small dagger beads on each side for its frill parts. Oh, that's good. Cindy says, I only learned patience through basket weaving. Susan says, most people wouldn't notice the difference in the finished work, but I notice everything in my own work. Yeah, also, here's the thing is if somebody is too close, if they notice something that's like 1 millimeter away on your head, then they're too close. Say, back up, you're too close. So that pearl, the hole is a little bit small. So I'll save that for another project that I don't need this for. Because these head pins are a little bit thick, but I like a good sturdy head pin sometimes because I don't want to do all this work and then all this stuff just falls apart. Marianne says, I find that sometimes leaving a project until the next day makes it seem better. Our friend Harry is watching. Hey, Harry. Susan says, that's true. That close is creepy. Well, that's what happens sometimes. That's too close. I mean, if you're making it to sell, then that's a different thing where you want to have it so it's not going to um, be an issue. Let's see, third time's the charm. So the thing with pearls is sometimes the holes are not always drilled evenly. And normally that's not a big deal. You just get the bead reamer out and put it through a couple times and it helps open up the holes. I unfortunately don't have one right with me. It's at the cottage. Cindy says, leave the project for another day if you get frustrated. Yeah, I think that's one of those things, but also, like, it is a good thing to be able to work through frustration sometimes. You know, it's one of those things where, like, sometimes you don't have a choice. Um, as a, I used to do a lot of custom commission stuff, and if somebody needs it for a wedding or whatever, you don't have a choice of waiting. So sometimes it's good to just kind of learn, um, to be able to work through things. And and that sometimes that's not always easy. I always like to prefer to work on stuff when I'm in a good mood. um, I think that the things we make sometimes carry the energy that we're feeling. It kind of imbues the project with that kind of energy. So, I always try to focus on positive things when I'm working so that, for whoever gets the piece or whoever wears the piece, I think you can kind of feel it. Now, sometimes the plating on headpins can be a little bit thick, which is not necessarily a bad thing unless you're trying to force it through like these pearls. And these pearls have relatively small holes. So, these actually, the holes are pretty big when you're talking about pearls. Like these ones have micro mini holes. Um, so that's not ideal for this. But the holes are pretty big. It just needs a little bit of coaxing. June says, I think artists are more critical of their work because they see more options and other possibilities and can make the design project. Um, yeah, I agree with that. There are people like William. Sometimes I'll make something and I'll show it to him, and he will say things like, "Oh, why are you put that away?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't like it. It's messed up." And he'll be like shocked. So I'm just stringing that up on the head pin. I'm gonna put that on that little beaded pearl loop, like so. And he'll be like, "Why? What's wrong with it?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't like this part." And he's like, "You're crazy." So the thing is that everybody sees things differently, I guess. Now let's hope this one goes on easy, because I would like it to be easy instead of me like struggling. Here we go. Let's see. That feels easier. Here, so they keep a bead reamer on my flex shaft at my bench, so if I'm beading, I can clear that or enlarge the hole. Correct. Me too. But I'm at the house. Coletti says, I enjoy the engineering of constructing a project and the problem solving. Sometimes I make a note of things to try next time. I think that's super important, to document your process. Um, so I've been enameling a lot more lately, and one of the things I've learned is super important to document your process because I think we would all like to remember the things we do, and that's great if you can. However, in all likelihoods, when you're working with variations that are very subtle and minimal, if you don't keep good records, then you're gonna forget, and then you're gonna have to do it all. You're gonna have to go through that whole process of remembering how to do something, and that may not be great. Maybe you forgot something, or you're working on something that took hundreds of hours to make, and then you go to fire it, and then you're not paying attention, and then you just kind of burn up hundreds of hours of work that way if you don't kind of remember the way to do it. So I always keep an idea book with me, and that helps kind of. So those are these. And then I can kind of think about things, and then I don't have to redo stuff. So I have a couple different. I have these ear wires, and these might be too long. And then Marion says someone talked about using a red linen card on their project. It wasn't red. So these ones might be too long. So here's this. But I don't know. I don't like that. So I guess we can take it to a vote. I love a good lever back ear wire. I think lever backs are great because then you don't have to mess around. Like sometimes you lose that little backer and that giblet gets lost, and then you're hunting around for it. I know sometimes I have a couple customers that they lose a bunch of their earrings because they have those little posts, and then their ears somehow work the ear wire out. So I like a lever back because it's attached. Now everything has kind of like a positive and negative. And one of the things is that like lever backs definitely have a particular look. So not everybody loves the look of a lever back. And also every once in a while, they can fail. And so sometimes people are not in love with that. Now I'm digging around hunting for that business. I got every color except the ones that I need. But yeah, so that's fun. So I'll look around some more for this. I have all this chain. That's the thing that's getting in the way of my progress, is because it keeps getting in the way and get tangled up. At the show, we put all the pendants on necklaces and chains because a lot of the people who go to like the shows like Handmade Arcade are not necessarily going to be beaters, so they're not necessarily going to have a bunch of chains to put stuff on. Coletti says, I have a little plastic photo album that holds my bead design recipes written on 3x5 index cards handy in my drawer. That's good. Yeah, I think that's a good idea, especially if you're having to replicate a design over and over. A lot of stuff I should probably document things more. A lot of times I just kind of freewheel it, and if it works, that works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I realize that that's not maybe necessarily the best solution. Susan said that might be an interesting look, though. I know. I don't necessarily dislike it, but I don't know. I like those lever backs. You know, I have a tackle box that I also carry with me sometimes that they might be in that tackle box. But I got them in gunmetal, I got them in copper, I got them in gold. Anyway, I'll just use these for now. That way, we cook with the gas instead of just like look at each other. So here's this finished pair of earrings. These are they're kind of cute. And that gives me an idea looking at those. So let's try something else. I have this sterling silver wire. And I think it's 24 gauge. So it's fairly fine. And I'm going to cut off maybe a foot or so of this wire. And this is a dead soft wire. So keep that in mind. Sometimes you want dead soft, sometimes you don't. And the times you don't, you want to have something that's not going to be. You have to have that thing where it's like it's for like a structural support kind of thing. All right, I cut off 2 lengths of this wire. Susan said they have a swingability that's important in dangle earrings. I would try them on and look if I had my ears pierced, but I don't. So we're just gonna have to roll with it for the time being. All right, but I'm gonna get some more of those ear wires now that I've played around with them. I'm like, oh, I like them. So I've got another pair of this. And what I'm gonna do is I've cut off 2 lengths of this dead soft wire. I'm going to come up to the end and I'm going to so on these pliers, they're relatively the same size, but sometimes on pliers, one side's a little bit bigger and one side's a little bit smaller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this around the tip of one. And I'm going to create that kind of little loop. And then we'll get one of these ear wires out. Open it up. And close it back up. I'm going to hold it like so, where I'm bracing one side with my fingertip, and then the other side I can wrap using the pliers. Normally I would use a little bit of a finer tip pliers. And then I'm going to go in here and wrap this around and tighten it up. Now normally I don't trim stuff, but I might end up trimming this just so that the loops are all the same. Or the coils are all the same. So I don't like to do that because you end up with a bunch of giblets of wire, which is not necessarily a problem for me because I can just melt them if they're silver. And here we go. But I do want that to be nice and secure, because if it's not secure, then it's gonna come loose, and I don't want that to happen. So I've twisted this around, and then I'm going to take those under the pliers and squeeze the coil so that it's nice and together like so. All right. And then I'll adjust this wire so that it comes out like so. All right. Susan says you can get a Head and Shoulders display with pierced ears, then you can see how they dangle. That's true. All right. So I've got this. I've wrapped this around. It's pretty secure. It's a little loosey goosey, but not wild. And then I'm gonna get some of these seed pearls since I have them, and I'm gonna put them in here like so. And then I'm gonna wrap around. So I've got this, and I'm gonna push this through. And I'm going to hold this so that the pearl doesn't twist. And then I'm going to wrap this through again. Now, the key is not to kink up my wire, because if I kink up my wire, I'm going to deal with that later. And I don't necessarily want to do that. So I'm going to go 5 times through. So I went 3 times, 4 times, and this is 5 times. And then I'm going to string up one of those pearls, seed pearls. And then I'm going to wrap that around 5 times again. I made a design like this, maybe, 11 or 12 years ago. And I won this huge competition with it. I made these labradorite earrings. And we had just opened the store. And I made these kind of, I had these really flashy labradorite earring or drops, and I hung those in the middle, and I made this frame and then embellished the frame on the outside with, I can't remember what I embellished it with, but it added this nice kind of studded textural element, and I won the competition. Coletti says, what about a laser cutout with face and ear? Yeah, you could do that. I just hold them up, and if I like it, I like it. But that's another thing is, how much are you invested in finding that out? One thing about this technique is you can't go too far up because there's nowhere for the ear lobe to go. So you kind of have to be mindful of that, because if you go too far, there's nowhere for the earlobe to go. So I tend to keep this closer to the bottom. And then also you kind of have to conform your pearls to the shape of your ear wire. Otherwise, then they kind of stick up. Like this one kind of sticks up, which bothers me. So I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to go with it. But I am going to have them all on the same plane there, and then just keep wrapping. Now you can also, if you want, you can coil and wrap around an ear wire and just use the wire. You don't have to add any beads. And that's another kind of subtle kind of textural difference, which I think is nice. It adds a little bit of a design element, but you don't have to have a great big kind of, it doesn't have to be as flashy as this. You can use little tiny seed beads, or you can do something else. But I think that looks nice. I'll get them all on the same plane, and then I'm going to trim that. I'm going to pull the wire. I like it to have the wire not facing the front, so I kind of push it off to the side. And then what I do is I'll take these pliers, and then I'll go really into them really tight and start twisting around. And what that will do is it will kind of lock it in place. But you do have to be careful that you don't accidentally bend up your ear wire so that you can't. So I think that's fun. And then the cool thing is then you don't need a whole lot on your design or your dangle. So I can. Coletti says great dimensional element. Thank you. I can use these. These are glass pearls. These big ones are glass pearls. Let me see if I can get some shell pearl. If I have a shell pearl in there, that'll work. Well, let's see. Maybe I'll just use these. They're glass pearls, but I don't have a problem with that because you can get great big ones, and then I'll have that dangle off there like so. Or maybe a little bit smaller. I don't need that to be King Kong sized. And since I just wire up some beads on ear wires on earrings I made today, I wasn't 100% happy, and I'm glad you showed this because now I can see it will look better if I reorient my beads. Thanks. Oh, good. I'm glad that was useful. I always try to be useful for y'all. Let me cut some of these off. And then hopefully this goes on easy. Nice and easy. There it is. Bingo, bingo. I like it when it just slides right on. Then it's no headache, no fuss, no muss. All right. And I'm going to create that wire wrapped loop. And then I can dangle that. Now, since I added those pearls on the side, before I close that up, what I'm going to do is open this loop up. And I mean, I guess it's not the end of the world because I could always slip it over. And it is easier to do this when you don't have that in the way. But I'm going to hold, for when you can't do that, I'm going to hold this like so. And then I hold this on my least dominant hand so I have the most torque. And I can twist it like so. Notice I'm not holding on. I saw somebody, and this is not a criticism of them, because if it works for them, it works for them, right? But they would not let go of the wire. They just held on to it. And then the whole end of that wire, they ended up trimming off because it got all kinked up and was all messed up and chewed up. And I was like, why don't you just like make multiple passes around and then you don't end up chewing up your wire. All right. So here we go. I think that turned out kind of cute. Coletti says, great tip for bossing the pearl on the wire. So there you go. I think that looks okay. I think it's cuter from the side. Yeah, I like that. That's all right. So let's do it again, y'all. I'll get some of the stuff out of the way so that I don't have to keep messing around. I think also one of the things is that if you're working with anything like fine wire or beading thread, if you've got pliers like hanging around, and you're not actively using them, put them under something or off to the side, because I feel like that little box joint is like magnetically charged to the end of the wire or whatever you're working with, and I always get it tangled. So that's just like a little tip. So let's do it again. So I'm going to twist this around. And I made that little loop. I'm going to take my ear wire and pass this back on through. And then I'm going to put this down towards the bottom here. And I'm going to take this off actually, because I realized I oriented this in a way that when I put them on, I'm not going to be able to. Let me see how this goes. It's one of those things like, in your mind, you want it to go a certain way and then it doesn't go. All right, so let me turn this. Here we go. All right, now you may have been like, what is he doing? And the thing is that with this, I want this wire, this short wire, to be on this side. And the reason why is I want that to go down. I don't want this to be on the top. I want that to be on the bottom. So if you saw me struggling just there to figure out which way, that's why. Okay, 1, 2. I always think that making stuff is such a nice way of kind of relaxing, and I think it's a nice productive way of channeling energy. It's something that I feel helps me be calmer and more in touch with myself. Marion says, my little cat lady just started purring. That's sweet. Amanda says, I love asymmetrical earrings. Marion says, a second earring or you're going to be a guy with a pearl earring. That's funny. I like that movie, by the way. In that painting. Susan says stringing is very relaxing. Yeah, I feel I love stringing. When I used to work and write things for books and magazines, I used to add all these crazy elements, and part of that is product placement. So if you use a lot of different products in your designs, you are more likely to get your design published, because then they could go then and get ad space sold for those things. So they'd say, oh, your thing is being featured in this design. Do you want to like sell ads, or do you want to buy some ad space? And so a lot of my designs, I would put like all these wild elements in there using all these different people's stuff. And like I like that stuff that I did before, but um a lot of it was very like over the top, which is not a problem. But for me, one of the things that just gives me joy is just to string up something on some beading wire and not overthink it and not overcomplicate it. Just keep it nice and clean and simple. And it's just so nice. And I always go back to that with my own jewelry because I love just letting the elements shine on their own without too many kind of like gimmicks or, oh, I'm gonna put this loop that I braided with gold wire on top of some thing that I fuse this light sensitive decal to that I fused with this thing and that thing. I think that that's cool, and there's something to be said for that. But sometimes there's also something to be said for like simple pleasures. I oftentimes feel like in this life where we're pressured to have too much kind of like going on. And with simple stringing, you really don't have anywhere to hide. So it's something nice to have something that's like simple and clean and has kind of an elegance to it. Amanda says, I love stringing. I miss the magazine. Yeah, that was one of my favorites. Susan says, simple designs are often the most wearable. That's true. Now, I should say, that comes with a grain of salt because I love some wild stuff too. So I love wild stuff, but I also love kind of like simple, not necessarily minimal, because I know there's a lot of talk about minimal jewelry, and I think that that's great. But I don't know. I'm not a minimalist, so it doesn't necessarily speak to me as the same way. I mean, I do like it, so I can't. I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say because I actually do like it. But at the same time, you know, I think for me and my aesthetic, I end up doing. Um, I put a lot of a different kind of beads in, which is nice. I think. I make what I call treasure necklaces a lot of times. And those I take beads that I've collected for years and years, and then I can, find new combinations and string things up. And it just makes me happy. When I look at them, I can think about all the different places that I got beads and where they come from and how they're made, um, or who made them in a lot of cases, especially a lot of my friends in the bead world. Um, if you stick around long enough for any industry or any kind of thing, eventually you're going to start losing people. And so, for me, one of the things that is nice is that I can look at something that somebody made who may have passed on, and I can think of it and think fondly of them. And that's a way that I can remember them every day. And I don't have to, do anything special. I can just look at that thing and connect to them, in a quiet kind of way. Like there's a wonderful artist who unfortunately passed away named Africa John. And whenever I use one of his beads in one of my creations, I think about him and the shows that we used to go to and what lovely experiences we had together. So it becomes a physical kind of touchstone to those memories. Um, and that's a lovely way to remember people, I think. Marianne says, each person's idea of bold is different too. Their pieces on a British Antiques Road house the owner thought was too bold to wear very often, but it was green and gold and not all that bold to me. Yeah, it just depends on what you like. Susan says, treasure necklaces are lovely. Thanks. So here are these earrings. I think those are kind of fun. And they have this nice studded kind of look. This one I may have to go in and do a little bit of tweaking, but I think that looks nice. All right, so I've got those. I did these. Marianne says I would wear those. So here we go. We've got these. And then let's do some, I'm going to do some color, I think. So I have this lovely little bag of pearls. And I've got all different kinds of colors and stuff. So I'm going to kind of push this off to the side and then spill out some. All right. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to lower this down a little bit so you can see it a little bit closer. And some of these are glass pearls, some of these are not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out some of them that I'm going to use as my focals. So I've got two of maybe these ones. Actually, since we're going to go with color, let's do color. So I've got these two, and they're kind of the same. And I've got these. I'm just kind of roughly laying things out in a pattern. And let's see. Maybe I'll put these little beads in between. Little itty bitty tiny pearls. I love those little itty bitty tiny pearls. Those bring me so much happiness. If I had another one of these, I'd replace those yellow pearls, I think. And then I'll put some of these blue ones. Those are fun. And they're faceted too, which is also neat. And let's see. Maybe some of these light blue. And I'm just laying these out, kind of letting my mind wander and finding the design and the shapes and the colors. I think it's always nice if you can give yourself permission to play creatively. You know, I notice after teaching for however many years I've been doing this now, that one of the biggest hurdles with creativity is allowing people to have permission to do what they want. And that's such a weird thing. Like, you know, especially for makers who have been making things for a while, they're like, oh, well, just make the thing. But some people, they have blocks where somebody told them one time when they were young or whatever that they weren't creative, or that they couldn't do it, or they weren't doing it the right way, or whatever. And people carry that with them. You know, some people get where they try to do and prove the opposite. Like, I'm one of those people who, like, if somebody says I can't do something, then I get where I'm like, oh yeah, sure. I'll do it. I'll show you. But I dropped the wire that I was working with, but that's okay. Oh, here we go. But sometimes people, they internalize that messaging and they think that they can't make stuff. And that's one of the hardest things when somebody is, when they have that where somebody's told them, that they can't do or they're not good enough. And so one of those things that I try to, help people with is to remind them that they are creative and that they do have a unique and individual voice, and that if they can get dressed in the morning, then they can, find something to put together. So sometimes it's not all, a lot of teaching sometimes is not necessarily about the skill itself, but the lessons that we impart while we're doing it. I don't know why I'm working with the silver because I remember I don't have the silver ear wires that I like, but I can always make the part and then just add the the ear wires later. Susan says, "Love faceted pearls." Me too. I think those are gorgeous. We do have some on the website. That's allegorygallery.com. Um, and when we were in Tucson last, I looked for more faceted pearls, and the faceted pearls that I saw looked kind of terrible. Like every once in a while, you'll have one that like it's chipped a little bit, and that's kind of natural. That's a process. They've been, pearls are a natural material. Natural pearls are a natural material. And so, they grow layer by layer, and not all the layers are perfectly smooth, and not all pearls are perfectly smooth. And so there is some chipping to be expected with sometimes faceted pearls. So it's not the big end of the world thing. However, sometimes what they'll do is they'll facet pearls as a way to hide uh, not as good pearls. So it's a way of kind of like you take your cheapy pearls that are not that good and then you facet them, and in theory that will make them better. But oftentimes they're so bad that they look real chewed up. So you just kind of have to know that that's what happens. But anyway, so would look for more faceted pearls last time, and I couldn't really find any good ones, so I didn't get any. And if I can't find them in Tucson, then the only way to find them sometimes is if somebody has like a secret stash somewhere. All right. I like those. Those are cute. I think that looks. Coletti says, I love your pearls of wisdom, Andrew. Thank you. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a wire wrap loop at the end. I'm going to raise this back up because I know for a fact that I'm going to knock into the camera if I don't. And I'm going to use this and create that little wire wrap loop at the end there. And sometimes what I'll do is I will mark my pliers. These are kind of new pliers to me. I usually have this one set that I use over and over and over. And I know those pliers like the back of my hand kind of business. And let me get this. And I'm just going to gently tie this off, wrap this off at the end. Anyways, so what I was saying is that if you want all your loops to be the same size, you can take a Sharpie and mark it on your pliers. And then that way, all of your loops are the same size. But if you use your pliers enough, then you kind of get to know exactly where that kind of sweet spot is. All right, so you may have noticed that I did not close up that wire, and there's a reason why I don't do that. And the reason why is because I want my wire wrap loops to be even. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this side next. And then I'm going to go back over after, and then I can trim it so that they're all the same. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just doing a simple wire wrap loop. And I'm coiling the wire around. And I think it's good to have a count. So what I did on this side, I did 3 times. And so on this one, I did 3 times. And then what I'm going to do is then I'm going to kind of count as I go around. So this is number 1, number 2, and then I think we're going to do just number 3, and then we'll trim it because it's kind of getting to the point where it's bigger than the pearl. And then I can go in and trim this, and then I'm going to tuck that wire in, that little wire end, so that I don't inadvertently stab myself or others. And then I'll go back to that side that I had before. I'll hold that stationary with the pliers and then keep wrapping. And I know that I have to do it 3 times. So this is 1, this is 2, and then this will be 3 on the end. All right. And then I'm going to tuck that in. And then that way your messy wire wraps are even every time. Because if you just do like until your wire runs out, then you can run out of wire. And one side you'll have like a great big wire wrap loop. And then the other side you'll have like a small one. So what I'll do is I have this little U shape now. And then I can either string the head pin or the ear wire directly on, so it creates this little kind of teardrop shape, or I can put a jump ring on, and that'll add another little decorative element. I think that's what we're going to do. Is I'm going to add a jump ring to that. And now to see if I can find one really quick. I don't know if I am or not. Let's see, are these soldered or not? Those are soldered, so we can't do that. Here, these are fun. So I love these kind of twisted jump rings like these ones. They have a little bit of a texture to them. They may be a little bit big for this project, but that's okay. So I'm going to open that up. And with this one, if I use like a long element like this, then I'm going to want to and close it up. Then I'm going to want to have a shorter ear wire. So just keep that in mind also. So that's cute, I think. What do y'all think? Do you like that? And then whenever I add the ear wire, then it will it'll cover that. So these are not the right color, but I'll swap these out later. But these are those lever backs. Susan says, I love texture jump rings like those. And then I just open that up and then slip this on. And then that way, there you go. They have a nice kind of movement to them. So I like that. Let's do it again, y'all. Coletti says, yes, thanks. I think it's fun. You know, pearls come in all different colors. All right. I keep getting these messages, and they keep popping up, and then I keep losing my train of thought. So, there's that. All right. So I'm going to create that wire wrap loop at the end here. And like I said before, I'm going to wrap this around, and then I'm going to wrap it 3 times, and then I'm going to let it, I'm not going to tuck that wire in. So I kind of did that shorter than I probably should have, but that's fine. So John Wilson says, Teresa, can you please send me a friend request if you don't mind? Oh, this is a spam person. All right. So we just had a spam person, so I just went through and deleted and blocked them. Sorry about that. I know somebody named John Wilson, so at first I was like, oh, what's he doing on? But anyway, so I'm just gonna string up the second earring. And Amanda says, love this style of earring. Thanks. I kind of like it as like a little treasure, you know? It's one of those things that's got a lot of little different things. They don't necessarily have to be exactly the same. You can swap them up. You just have to have, I think, the same ish silhouette or not. I mean, that's up to you. And you just keep, it's a great way to use leftover beads. Because every once in a while I end up with lots of like random beads from different projects that I've worked on that I have extras of. And so then I'm like, what am I gonna do with this? And so I have trays and trays full of these random leftovers that are kind of just waiting for the ideal project. And this is a nice way to use some of those leftovers. And if you have a random pattern, use that to your advantage, you know? So, you know, not everything in life is even and symmetrical and always works out. So it's good to kind of like swap things up every once in a while. And if something's too big or too small, you can always play around. And the great thing about a lot of these projects is that they're so easy that if something doesn't work out, you can always just start over again and it's not a big deal. Some projects, you know, if you spend hundreds of hours on something and then you need to change it, then you have to redo the whole thing, then it's not optimal. But some with this kind of thing, it's so quick and easy that you don't even have to like really think about it. You can just do it over, take it off and put it again, and it's not going to be the end of the world. Um, so just, uh, you know, be patient with yourself and enjoy that kind of experimental element. Um, because I think that that's part of the fun is like testing it out and seeing how it'll go, if it works or if it doesn't work. All right. So I'm just going to push this down to the end like so. And then I'm going to twist it up to see how it looks. Looks pretty good. And I'm just going to make that wire wrap loop. And then I've repeated the process and I've made another set of earrings. Though I will swap out the gunmetal ear wire once I get a chance, because I do want that to kind of match a little bit more. In theory, I could patina the wire with a little bit of liver of sulfur and then darken the metal. However, with pearls, you don't necessarily want to do that because it can damage your pearls. So if you are thinking of adding a patina to your wire, um, just know that it can ruin your pearls. So I would not dunk the pearls in the liver of sulfur mixture. However, if you want to still patina the wire, because say you have some like bright flashy wire and you don't want it to be bright and flashy, but you have pearls, you can use a paintbrush and then paint the area that you want to patina. Now, one thing you can also do is you can use a little bit of masking tape and mask off your pearls so that you don't have, so you don't end up uh, inadvertently damaging your pearls with the patina. There's a really wonderful book. It's kind of expensive book. It's called Patinas, and they go through all these different colors and recipes, and I think it's so fascinating. Um, and some patinas they work better than others for certain things. Um, but I don't know. I think I'm low key like mad scientist. Um, and I always like to test things and try things out and find new, different kind of techniques and ideas. Um, it makes me happy as a maker. Um, I think that's one of the reasons why enameling appeals to me so much, is because there is so many kind of things that you can try out. Um, and so anyway, so I don't know. I just think it's so fun to try things out and experiment. It makes me happy to do that. I know not everybody gets satisfaction from that, but I kind of think it's fun. I especially think that I consider myself an omnicrafter where I have a lot of things that interest me, but I also feel like those things inform the other things that I do. So, I think it's helpful. It makes you think about things in a different way. Charles Luton Brain, he wrote a book called Fold Forming, and one of the first introduction chapters that he has is about the difference between tradition and process. So, a lot of times, especially in jewelry, people are trained very traditionally. So, things that somebody did 100 years ago are things that we still do now, even though there's new technology, there's new ways of doing things. But because somebody did this back all the way back in the old times, and it's been handed down one person to the next person and the next person, then that kind of carries with it. And tradition is wonderful in the sense that it protects that knowledge. It's one of those things that safeguards it from being lost and retains that kind of way of doing. However, when you train somebody through process, you're kind of training them to think in a different way. And there are a lot of different, it's kind of like there are a lot of roads to get to the same destination. And it's kind of this, it's a love of learning and exploration and not necessarily doing things by rote. Um, and that's kind of like, I feel lucky that I went to school in a time when my teachers were still able to instill that love of learning. Um, I was kind of on that borderline generation before kind of in the middle of standardized testing. So, when you learn things so that you can take a test, you're not actually necessarily learning those things. You're learning those things to take a test. So that's different than if you are instilled with a curiosity that makes you want to explore something and try it again or understand why something works or how something works. It's a little bit of a different thing. So whenever I'm teaching or something like that, I like to try to instill this love of learning and curiosity, because then you'll never be bored because there will always be a new way of looking at something. All right, so Marion says it's nice to have pairs of individual beads, though. I find it harder to figure out what to do with just one bead. Well, make a treasure necklace. So there we go. There's our third pair of earrings. And yeah, so I think we'll lay them out. Look at my yield. Um, Maybe we'll make one more pair. How about it? We'll make one more pair. And then we'll now with these ear wires, another thing you can do is if you want, take your fine nose, round nose, and then just gently squeeze. You have to make sure that that's on the other end, and then go in there and then gently squeeze that like so. Can you see what I'm doing? I'm gently squeezing that. And what that's going to do is let me see if that worked out or not. Yeah, that worked out. Is that locks it in place. I mean, it didn't really do that good. So I might widen that back out because it distorts the shape of the ear wire. But I'll do that later, I think. So we've got those. We've got these. And then let's do one more. Let's get this wagon wheel and do something fun with it. So just a quick something. Well, I'm taking this wire. I inserted this wire. I've got about 2.5 inches or so. And then I've put that up like a little L. And then I'll bring this over and wrap this around like so. And then I want this to be relatively tight. This wire is so soft and supple that I can use my fingers. However, I like to get in the habit of using my tools just because uh, you just get in the habit of using your tools instead of your fingers. So when you do use stiffer wire or something like that, then you won't accidentally slice up your fingertips because that end of the wire can get kind of sharp. All right, so I'm gonna tuck this end in. And we'll look at it and see how it looks. Now, in theory, there's a thing you can do with your beads called high grading. And so when you have a strand of beads, and some of them are better than others, you pick out the best ones and you use it for the projects where you see them. So like these ones are pretty good, but like this one, like that, the front side's pretty good, but the back side has this kind of weird ring. Um, Lorraine says, "What gauge of wire are you using?" This is 24 gauge, so it's pretty light. But it also is nice because it goes through the holes on some of these pearls. Um, Now, this is not the most structural wire, so it's good for earrings and things like that. But if you're going to do something that there's a lot of weight that's involved, then maybe not, you know? But especially with these small hole pearls, if you use too thick wire, you're just not going to be able to get it through. And these little ones, you can ream out the holes, but eventually you're just going to ream out through the side because they're so small. And then we'll just make another wire wrap loop. All right, let me get into loop position. Because sometimes when I have this camera, I have to sit in a way that is not necessarily comfortable because I'm basically like sticking myself out there in this weird shape. Linus took this picture. We were sharing a hotel room, and she took a picture of me doing one of these presentations because we were doing one of those TGB presentations while I was away. So she took a picture of me all hunched over, and it was so funny because it looked so terrible. And I was always like, why is my back hurting so much? And it's because I look like a bent over C shape, trying to hold this in the light and up in the camera, but also have my butt on the seat. All right. So I tuck that in. And then there we have it. And I did kind of a little bit more of a messy wrap up at the top. And then that'll be the front, I think. And then I'll put maybe a decorative jump ring or something in there and then hang that off of some ear wire. Maybe it needs a little something, something there. I kind of feel like this white on white may have not been the solution, but maybe. So I'll play around with that. Anyways, I'm gonna let y'all go. We've been hanging out for 2.5 hours. Um, I wanted to say thank you to everybody who has kind of hung in there with us. I know that this has been kind of a challenging time for us, and it's not been the easiest of times. So I appreciate all of you out there who have rallied around us and rooted us on as we go through all this. It's not super easy when you're going through these kind of major life changes. But y'all have helped make this a much easier process than if we didn't have our support system. So thank you so much for being there for us, for supporting our small business. This is a very important time for us. It's the end of the year, which means that we kind of have to hustle. It's the time that we can either, it will either make or break our year, basically, is in this last month of the year. And what I mean by that is that sometimes um, they did a study of jewelers and jewelry people's fiscal years, and and this was in the most recent newsletter that Charles Luton Brain came out with. But he wrote about how a lot of jewelers, they make 70% of their annual income in the last quarter. And that's it's a time period that a lot of people rely upon to carry them through the harder times. I hate the idea, winter is coming, but in our experience, once we hit January, after January, the beginning of January, things drop down significantly for our small business. And they don't really pick up until a few months later. So, um, it's important to us to do our best to make the most in the last time. You have to kind of make hay while the sun is shining. And I am full of cliches and euphemisms and little catchphrases. But, anyways, yeah, so it's important to us to do as good as we can so that we can have a little nest egg for the winter. And of course, any other additional projects that we want to do above and beyond just surviving. So, thank you so much for all of your support. To any of those of you who got any of my recent Noble Creatures series of artwork, thank you so much. It really means a lot to me. I think this is probably the cutest of the bunch, but I always like the newest ones. Like this one, this owl one, I think is particularly charming. This duck one looks pretty good. This is probably my favorite of the bunch. This goat is fun, but that one's already sold. This bearded dragon is very specific, so I don't really intend. I don't know. This uh, it's technically a raven, but I kind of made its beak a little bit short. All of my crow ravens are kind of corvid-esque, but they're not like specifically one thing or the other, I guess. This giraffe is super cute. That one already sold. And then the salamander. The beaver, I know that's going to be specific, but here we go back again. Anyways, thank you so much for all of your help and for keeping us going and for hanging with us. Uh, thank you so much and hang in there, everybody. See ya.